Now, the authors of the replication study, of course, analyzed their data using traditional statistics, in this case, a repeated measures ANOVA. And the conclusion or the inference reached by their analysis is that in some arbitrarily defined population, the mean proportion of words recalled under the survival scenarios is greater than the mean proportion of words recalled under the vacation scenarios. Now, in observational order modeling, we're seeking an entirely different inference. What we're trying to do is pick between causal models. Now, in this case, the basic idea is that this fitness-related processing causal mechanism ought to outweigh this generic mnemonic processing causal mechanism at the level of the person. So for any individual in the study, that person should recall more words under the survival scenarios than under the vacation scenarios, because this causal mechanism essentially is more efficient or outpowers this causal mechanism. So let's turn to the OM software and see how we'd analyze the data at the level of the person. So what we're going to need to do is first separate the data into the two groups. So notice we have the VS-VS and the SV-SV groups. Why we have to separate them will be obvious as we work through the analyses here. So let's select Edit and select Cases, and we'll switch to the group ordering. We'll go ahead and start working with the VS-VS condition. Select OK. So now we have the 49 individuals who are in the VS-VS condition. I'm going to rename this data set quickly so that we're clear who we have here. And now what we want to do is compute the proportion of words that were recalled when presented under the survival scenario and compare that to the proportion of words recalled when they were presented under the vacation scenario. So we'll select Compute and compute composite orderings. Now this is the VS-VS condition. So the vacation words are under block 1. We're going to scroll down to the recall here. So block 1 are vacation words, block 2 are survival words, block 3 vacation, block 4 survival. It's the VS-VS condition. So let's compute the survival words first, or the words presented under the survival condition. So that's block 2. I'm going to select those, I'm going to move them over, but let's actually weight them by 0.0625, and that will essentially give us a proportion. So we've got those weighted by 0.0625. Now we need to go and get block 2, or block 4 rather, I'm sorry. So we'll pull out block 4 items. Okay, so we have all 16 items that could potentially be recalled, and now we can label this proportion survival recalled, and we'll select OK. Now let's go ahead and compute the proportion for the vacation words. So we'll go down to the recall here, and now what we want, since this is VS-VS, we want block 1, and again I'll use this weighting scheme, and we want block 3. And we'll now title this, instead of survival, we'll title it proportion vacation recalled. Select OK. And I'm going to scroll over to the right, and there we see our newly computed proportions. Now what we want to do in OOM is define our orderings. Now in this particular analysis we're going to run in a few minutes, this isn't really critical or necessary here, but it's always good form in the OOM software to define your orderings. So we have this proportion recalled here. Oops, what am I doing here? I'll scroll down. And the minimum is obviously 0 for each of these, and the maximum is 1. And what I'm going to do is use the auto-generate feature here. I'm just going to divide this into 10 units. So we have 0 to 0.09, 0.9 all the way to 1. Actually, let me get rid of this prefix 2. Okay, very good. So I'll select OK. Let's look at the distribution. So you can see here the distribution of words recalled under the survival scenarios. Now let's actually copy these definitions over to the vacation words, and we'll update that, and we can see the distribution of words recalled, or the proportions rather. And sure enough, it looks like fewer words were recalled overall compared to the survival scenario words. Select OK here. And now the analysis that we want to run, the labels, analysis we want to run here is an ordinal analysis. So we'll select ordinal analysis, concatenate orderings. And we'll scroll down and we'll move our survival over and vacation over. Now we want to define the ordinal pattern that we're expecting. We'll change this color as well. And let's magnify this so we can see what's going on. So notice proportion, survival, recalled, proportion, vacation, recalled. Which of these do we expect to be greatest at the level of the individual? Well, it's the survival versus the vacation here. Let's take a look at the first person. The first person actually fits the expected ordinal profile, and we can see that here. So 0.44 words, proportion rather, compared to 0.31 survival versus vacation. So that person fits. Notice the next person's 0.56. That's a tie. That person doesn't fit. So we look, we can see, aha, that person doesn't fit the expected ordinal pattern. The next person does, 0.19 to 0.06, and so forth. So that's all we're doing here, and we can scroll through all of these, is we're looking at whether the ordinal pattern matches each individual's proportions. So let's select OK here, and we'll get a randomization test, and we're actually analyzing the numbers here, not the deep structures that we defined. And let's select OK. And here we see then that 77.55% of the individuals fit that ordinal pattern. We can see the pattern again here. In other words, 38 out of the 49 individuals recalled more words under the survival scenario than under the vacation scenario. So that's a very impressive result indeed. Almost 78% of the individuals. That's a very impressive result. Now, if you want a probability statistic, we do have a randomization test that we run here, and it computes a probability statistic. We refer to it as a chance value or C value, but it is a probability from a randomization test. Now, all that's happening here is that we're randomly shuffling the actual data for one of these orderings, and then we're pairing them up. And then we compute the PCC, and we do that over and over again, in this case 1,000 times, and we look to see how often did we get 77.55% or higher. In this case, not a single time did we obtain 77.55% or higher with randomized versions of the actual data. The highest PCC, in fact, for randomized data was 61%. So this is an impressive result. It's almost 78%, almost 80%, and it's an unusual result if you just randomly shuffle your own data. So very good results for the VS-VS condition. Now for the SV-SV condition, we again go back to the original data, and we're going to now select out the SV-SV condition. So we have another data set opened here. Again, I'm going to rename it so we know who we're working with, and we'll go right to our compute statements. Compute composite. And now SV-SV block 1 are survival relevant words, or survival condition words, I should say. And again, I'm going to put my weight in here to make these proportions 0.0625. Move those over, and now we want block 3. And again, we'll call this, or name it, proportion survival recalled. Select OK. Go back and now compute the composite for the vacation words. That's going to be block 2 now, since it's SV-SV condition, and block 4. Have our proportions almost set up here. Now we'll make this vacation recalled, proportion vacation recalled. Select OK, and we'll scroll over and we see the proportions here. Now notice at the level of the individual case, the first row here, case number 5, the survival words were recalled at a lower clip, 0.06 versus 0.44. This person fit expectation, this person fit expectation, this person did not fit expectation, this person did not, and so forth. So what we're going to do again is go through and tally up the number of individuals who fit expectation in terms of that ordinal pattern. So we'll select analyses again, ordinal analysis, concatenate, and we're in the SVSV condition now, and we'll move survival and vacation recall proportions over. And once again, survival should be higher than the vacation. Select OK, and we run it. And unfortunately now we are down to 32%. So a minority, 16 out of 50, recalled words in a way that was consistent with this expected ordinal pattern. So this is, of course, contrary to expectation. So this is not good news, unfortunately, for the fitness-related processing mechanism. And so if we switch back to the paper, we can see the results here. The PCC, 77.55%, and then 32% for the SVSV condition. So this was, as we wrote in the paper, indicative of some sort of methodological confound within the study. So in the next video, we're going to analyze the data so we can evaluate the causal mechanism shown in figure number 5.